All right, here's Kathy. We'll get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are doing well. I am still glad that we all didn't float away last Monday in the first storm of the season, and hopefully that's the wettest we're going to get. I'd like to welcome you all to Tiger Bay today. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here and continue just to be a part of this tremendous political and social force in the community, and continuing to help grow our membership and our presence in the area. Our program committee has put together, I think, what will be a fantastic program today. Very enlightening, very educational, and good to see from both sides. So if you will, before we get started, just a quick reminder to, if you have cell phones on, to please switch them over to off or onto vibrate or what have you, so we don't hear Mickey Mouse singing us a song in the middle of our presentation today. That being said, I would like to have us all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As we take our seats, I think it is only appropriate that we take this time to just observe a short moment of silence for the innocent victims of the tragedy of this past weekend. So if you would, please join me in just a moment of silence. Thank you. So as you may know, my name is Ben Bacher. I'm the chair of the Tiger Bay Club of Manatee this year. I thank you all for the privilege to be part of this and to moderate these events. We have a fantastic board of directors and a strong programming committee that has been bringing you what we think are just terrific topics this year so far, and we have no shortage of great programs lined up for the rest of the year. So if you don't follow us on Facebook or online, or sign up for our mailing list to keep informed of what's going on, please, by all means, see Elaine on your way out the door, and she'll be happy to get you signed in. I think we've got a good topic today to dive right into, so I'll just go ahead and get started with a little primer here before we introduce today's speakers. Since the U.S. Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling opened the floodgates to unlimited and anonymous political donations from corporations and other special interests, it is widely contested that the influence of money may have corrupted our democratic election process. Campaign finance reform was enacted over the years with the goal of making campaign contributions traceable in both amount and donor identity. In response to that ruling, we've seen a tremendous growth of organizations and entities that are not required to disclose their donors or their donations. Some may argue that they have a right to privately support causes and candidates, while others point out that these organizations, while lawful, subvert the intent of the campaign finance laws by allowing unlimited donations by anonymous donators, thereby allowing special interest groups to own a candidate. We'd like to thank you for joining us today as we discuss campaign finance and the topic of what some are calling dark money on a local and national scale. I'd like to begin by introducing our first speaker, Kathy Antunes. She is a public interest advocate, a writer, speaker with nonprofit board management and development. Kathy grew up in Westchester County, New York, and earned a BA in history with a concentration in economic study at the University of Virginia. Her professional background includes work at IBM, teaching law school admissions test prep for Stanley Kaplan, and time as a realtor in Virginia before embarking on an 18-year executive sales career in the pharmaceutical industry. With 3 Fortune 500 companies. Kathy won regional and national awards and assignments as a brand advisor for infectious diseases and allergy plans. As a hospital sales professional, Kathy assisted hospitals in Southwest Florida in achieving national patient safety goals. She also holds a master's degree in theology. As a military spouse, she has lived across the U.S. Her experience of military life as the granddaughter of Irish immigrants and as a student at the university founded by Thomas Jefferson all contribute to her appreciation for the value and importance of civic engagement. Locally, she has served on numerous boards, including Sarasota County Council of Neighborhood Associations. She writes a monthly column for SRQ Daily on local politics, blogs on local politics at thedetail.net, and hosts a radio show on WSRQ, The Detail. Kathy has been a Sarasota resident since 1999, is married to local endocrinologist Jose Antunes, and they have 5 children. Please welcome Kathy Antunes.
Thank you so much for having me here today and get myself situated. I moved to Sarasota in '99, but my first experience of this area was a vacation in 1986 at Anna Maria Island. So I fell in love and came back to settle here. And having called on the medical community here for about 10 years, it's just very nice to be asked to share information with all of you in Bradenton. So today we're talking about dark money. And I think there's an appreciation of dark money and its impact in national elections. But what I think may be lacking is an appreciation for how important PACs and dark money are to our local elections, how much they influence the process. In my view, this is legal, but it is legalized corruption. It is corrupting our process because the voter does not have full disclosure. And without that, you can't really competently know who's trying to influence your vote. There are 3 ways that I'll be talking about, not to say they're the only 3 ways, but there are 3 ways that dark money can influence the process. One is through an unidentifiable LLC, a corporation that you can't trace. Another is when PAC money is flipped from one PAC to another, and it's an onerous burden for a voter to understand who's trying to influence their vote. And the third way, I just look at the business practices of our local PACs, and you start to see some strange donors coming in with large amounts of money that don't really have a connection to our local community, and I will talk about that as well. The first story has to do with the 2014 election for school board in Sarasota County. And what we saw in that race between Ken Marsh and Bridget Ziegler was a PAC that was supporting Bridget brought in a $45 donation from a company called Phoenix Media. Eric Robinson was the manager of that PAC, and when he was asked, what is Phoenix Media? We can't find it. This was Jeremy Wallace interviewing him. He said, it's an out-of-state corporation, and you will never find it. He also said donors don't want to be known. Donors don't want to be identified. David Ramba, who's also somebody who manages a lot of PACs, has said, what the donors want is plausible deniability. He's quoted in articles saying that. So these are folks who don't want you to know that they're trying to influence you. And in that race, that $45,000 donation, it could be argued, made the difference in edging Bridget Ziegler over Ken Marsh. You know, people have argued that. When I did my own research and looked for that LLC, I found 5 out of the state of Florida. The one that appeared to be the most likely to me was founded in Wyoming. And corporations that are founded in Wyoming, you can just found a corporation in Wyoming with a website. You don't have to have a person associated with a corporation. So wherever that money came from, there's no way for us to know. It was out-of-state money, but there was no way for us to know who was trying to influence our school board race and why. So that's the unidentifiable LLC. The second way, and now I'm going to ask you to go to the visual aid that I provided for you all. This has to do with PAC donations that flip from one PAC to another. And specific to Manatee County, in 2013, you had an indigent healthcare sales tax. And I believe the intent there was to provide money so that people could go to walk-in clinics and maybe not clog your emergency rooms, which, frankly, you don't want to be behind the line if you're having a heart attack or something with a clogged emergency room. Having worked in healthcare, I understand that. So Manatee Against Taxation received on the first page, this is pretty simple, a $50,000 contribution from the company Robinson Hanks Accounting, and Eric Robinson was the manager of this PAC. His company contributed 50 grand. The other contribution came from the Committee to Protect Florida's Seniors. And at the time, the media could not figure out who actually was funding the Committee to Protect Florida's Seniors. So there was press about this. They engaged in robocalls and advertising the accounting service fee, and this was actually listed in the Division of Elections website as an accounting service fee, was 47% of the total amount of the PAC. But they were successful in defeating that sales tax, but the voters did not know who was actually funding that effort. Now, let's go to the second page, and you can, somebody has described this as a spider web of confusion, and as we go on, you'll see that. And that is intentional. This spider web is so that you don't know what's going on. So I'm going to be directing you to where to put your attention so it doesn't get too confusing. Okay, Committee to Protect Florida's Seniors. You can see a huge donation coming out of Tallahassee in that PAC. And then you can see individual contributors. Now these folks, they were not listed by name, but by corporation. So I actually had to find out whose companies were associated with those addresses. The average voter will never do this. They're never going to do this, nor should they have to. This is a system that works for the donor. It's not working for the voter. So you can see Carlos Barouf's business associated with his addresses, Pat Neal, Randy Benderson, and you've got Mosaic and another donor. And what's also happened with that Committee to Protect Florida Seniors is they, in turn, that PAC made donations to other local PACs. One of them, Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota, that's a PAC registered in our county, and Take Back Our Government, which was managed by Bob Wechter. Now, page 3, just to give you some clarity in this spider web of how a particular donor can shield their identity. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, okay, you'll see that companies associated with Pat Neal made a $20,000 donation to a PAC called Volusia Good Government. Okay, Volusia is a county has nothing to do with us, but that was the name of the PAC. And another thing to notice is these mailers have names on them that either sound really good, the Committee to Protect Florida Seniors, who's going to be against that? They're not going to say the Committee to Defeat an Indigent Health Care Tax. So anyway, the PAC, the total amount of contributions to that PAC was $22,000. $20,000 of it went to Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota, and then Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota gave $20,000 to another PAC. So my main point with this graphic is just to demonstrate to you how a local donor, who some would call a special interest, has the ability and uses the system to hide or shield or veil their donation. If you move on to page 4, Take Back Our Government. This was the PAC that was working to defeat Joe McClash. And Take Back Our Government was managed by Bob Wechter. And you can see there are 5 committees that gave money to this particular political committee. When you have a committee giving to a committee, it inherently creates obscurity, dark money. So the only one that could be traced easily, I still had to look up who the address was associated with, was Mr. Barouf, who gave $27,000 to Take Back Our Government. And what candidates find if they're not backed by these PACs when they're in opposition to this is a deluge of negative mailers. Mr. McClash made it clear he felt they were lying about him, and they don't have an opportunity to respond effectively, and without knowing who's actually trying to influence them, the voter is in the dark as well. Page 5, and you've seen, one of the things I think is evident for us is our political fortunes are becoming tied, Sarasota and Manatee County, and you can see this in the PAC money flow. So here you have the PAC that's shown up a couple of times, getting donations from other PACs. Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota. But what I'd like to direct your attention to are the 3 donors that I've circled in the middle left of the page. Now, this is where, when you have one person, and in March and February when I did a lot of this research, Mr. Robinson's collection of PACs numbered about 30 or 40, and when you count the contributions, his, I would call it assets under management, there were $5 million worth of contributions in the PACs that he was managing. So you've got 3 contributions from doctors whose address is in Naples, Florida, contributing $180,000 to a Sarasota PAC, which is bizarre to me. I don't know why people who live in Naples would be contributing to Sarasota. When you look then also, Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota, managed by Eric Robinson, cut a check for $140,000 to an LLC owned by Eric Robinson and our county commissioner, Christine Robinson, for $140,000. And then on her financial disclosure to the state, Commissioner Robinson said Robbie's LLC brought in $7,000 for her. So I'm going to wrap it up, I know. The last page just shows 2 PACs heavily funded by Mr. Neal. And if you look at where that money is going, Forward Strategies Consulting, a total of $150,000. This firm does market research, focus groups. That's what I could glean from their website. The point being, there are a number of people willing to put big money into local political committees, and they are doing research, and they are trying to figure out how to influence your vote. And what motivates me and what I'd ask you to do is local elections matter. So many people pay no attention to what's going on down ballot. And when you look at your quality of life, and boy, there are people who understand that it's big money for them. It's big money for you. It's your house, it's your quality of life, it's the education of your children. And we have to start questioning who's trying to influence our votes and why. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Our second speaker today is former Senator Mike Bennett. Mr. Bennett took office as the Manatee County Supervisor of Elections on January 8th, 2013. From 2002 until 2012, he served in the Florida Senate, representing District 21, consisting of Manatee and Lee counties, parts of Sarasota, Charlotte, and DeSoto counties. He chaired the Senate Community Affairs Committee and served on the Senate Budget, Banking and Insurance, Criminal Justice, and Military Affairs, Space and Domestic Security Committees. Mr. Bennett served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2000 to 2002. Mr. Bennett moved from Brainerd, Minnesota. Did I get that right? Brainerd, Minnesota. Close. To Bradenton with his family at age 10 and is a proud graduate of Sarasota High School. Following high school, he joined the Navy and served 4 tours in Vietnam. After graduating with a BA and MBA from Drake University, Mr. Bennett worked as an associate professor in the College of Business at Iowa State University and subsequently at Drake University. From there, he founded Aladdin Ward Electric in Bradenton in 1985. Currently, in addition to his duties as supervisor of elections, he is a business development consultant with Bright Future Electric. He serves on numerous community boards, including the Sanka Foundation, Florida Maritime Museum, and the Florida Events Support Task Force. Mr. Bennett is a supporter of Mote Marine Laboratory, the Greater Sarasota Sartoma Club, and Southeastern Guide Dogs, among others. As a military veteran, Mr. Bennett remains devoted to veterans' causes. Please welcome Mr. Mike Bennett.
Going to be an interesting year. Political phobia. Political phobia is kind of a created word. It's the fear of politics. We don't have an official word for the fear of voting, but what we've got right now in our country is what I call electile dysfunction. That's the inability to get turned on by any candidate. You know, although we're really here to talk about dark money, but really dark money came about because of the bundling of money. And everybody thinks that that's a relatively new thing. It actually goes back to McKinley and Bryan back in 1896, I believe it was, when the financial communities got together and started bundling their money. to get McKinley elected. And so it's been going on and on and on. And the problem with dark money or bundling money is the fact that the government is controlled by politicians. The IRS is not about to upset the politicians who hire them, so consequently, they don't enforce the rules. What Kathy was talking about a minute ago, and I know that Keith will highlight, most of these go through charitable organizations. And they go all the way from the Catholic Bishops Foundation to Planned Parenthood to the Humane Society, and they keep shuffling money back and forth. They find a friendly nonprofit, and they find a nonprofit that is willing to take in their money, and as long as they spend less than 50%, basically 49.5% they can do for political reasons, they're clean. The problem with it is the IRS doesn't enforce those rules because the IRS has never come up with a definition of what is the political money. So consequently, the politicians, the President of the United States or the head of the agency is controlled by Congress. They don't want to change the rules. And so consequently, what you're looking at is where the politicians truly are driving it and will continue to drive it. And until the people of the United States really back up and say, you know what, we've got to change this. And the only way that's ever going to happen is right now we've got a weird guy running who is not a politician, and he wants to change everything. And then we've got a lady who's running, and she's being investigated by the FBI and the Judiciary Department. And so you want to know what's wrong with our system. Well, neither one of them would get elected without dark money, without being able to collect money, bundle it, and put it behind their causes. And I happen to agree that it should all disappear, but you know, we get a lot of comments after the Citizens United, and you start seeing the Koch brothers and those type of people, and say, my God, that's horrible. These people are bundling that money and doing this. And if you really look at the statistics, the Koch brothers and those type of people, I think Koch brothers actually ranks number 59 when it comes to contributing money to political campaigns. If you look at the top 10 people or 10 groups that bundle money and put it together, actually 7 of those, I believe, are labor unions, okay? So everybody's got a different issue of what they're trying to do and how it affects us. And what Kathy is saying is absolutely true, but that's the rules, okay? And unless the rules are changed, it's going to continue along that path, and we're not going to have any change because if you're running for political office, and I've been there, you know, she spoke a minute ago about David Rambo, a good friend of mine. He ran my dark money campaign, okay? And guess what? It worked out pretty good. I got elected, okay? Do you think I wanted to change the rules when I was in there? Nope, okay? Do you really think that the politicians who are elected in Washington, D.C. right now want to change the rules? Because that's where the money came from. They don't want to do it, so consequently, they have not worked with the IRS to write the rules to change the definition of dark money. When you have the ability, I just left a meeting a little while ago, literally this morning, where we were talking about shifting money from one nonprofit to another. It just so happened at a moment in time, both of these nonprofits were carrying the same $5 million on their balance sheet, because until that money's technically transferred, okay, well, they do the exact same thing when it comes to bundling money in our country. And I don't think it's going to change until the people of the United States get some kind of a constitutional amendment, getting rid of the Citizens United type thing and getting it back into the hands of the American people. The problem we have with that is when the election's over, nobody gives a damn, and they don't do anything about it. And that's really where we're at today. The dark money, that's not what scares me in the national race. It doesn't scare me in the presidential race. What scares me is one of them is going to win. That scares me, okay? Because guess what? They're not going to change the rules either. And until we all, as citizens, say, you know what? Citizens United has got to go away. We need to change. And we're only going to do that if we change the Constitution, because the problem with it is, in some countries, okay, they do limit the donations. Well, in our country, because of the right to free speech, if you want to support me and you say, well, the most I can spend on a campaign and the most money I can raise is $1 million, and you say, no, I really, really want to support Mike Bennett, but he's already at the $1 million. okay? It takes away your right to free speech. And so when you start crossing those things over, the right to free speech, unfortunately, it has corrupted our system, and I don't know necessarily what we're going to do about it until we, as citizens of the United States, force some kind of a change. And that's only going to happen, I believe, with a constitutional amendment that will be driven by the people of the United States, because the politicians are not going to do it. And it's a shame that when I look at some of those things, knowing I was part of that system, but that was the rules, and they are playing by the rules. Very rarely do you see anybody ever prosecuted. I can't even remember, Keith probably does because he actually researches this thing, but I don't know when the last time anybody was truly prosecuted for dark money. And so that's really where we're faced at. We'll talk about it. Florida tried to do it in 2013. My last year in the Florida legislature, we passed House Bill 569, which was supposed to clean us up a little bit, okay? Well, let me tell you what happened. They said, look, we will have less dark money if we will raise the contribution limits. Instead of limiting somebody to a statewide race or a state race, we'll take it from $500 to $1,000, okay? And we'll get rid of the continuing committees of continuing existence. So what they did is they relied on political committees. And all they did is took the limit off of what you could contribute to a political committee, and it's the exact same thing. And that's exactly how the game is played. So, you know, I'm sure we'll hear some more about it this morning, but I wished I had an answer for you. I know you'd love to see some kind of an answer, but I don't think we're going to get it done today, and we will not get it done in our country until we get some kind of a constitutional amendment driven by the citizens of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. Our third speaker today is Keith Fitzgerald, PhD. He is a professor of political science at New College of Florida. Keith is a professor and chair of the faculty at New College of Florida and will be on the Board of Trustees in August. He is a member of the Advisory Council of Faculties and teaches American politics and political theory. His specialty is American political development. His published work includes a book by Stanford University Press called Face of the Nation, The State, Immigration Policy, and the National Identity. He is a former member of the Florida House of Representatives, serving 2 terms representing parts of Sarasota and Manatee counties, and served as the House Minority Caucus Policy Chair. He ran for U.S. Congress in 2012. He is active in both the Sarasota and Florida Democratic Party. He is the state committeeman from Sarasota County. He has done consulting work on political strategy and has recently launched a small business, Phronesis Consulting, LLC. Hopefully I got that correct. One for two today. He is creating a program called New College in Tallahassee, where students spend a semester in the state capitol taking a new college class on Florida politics and experience intensive internships on the Capitol. Keith's hometown is Louisville, Kentucky. He graduated from the University of Louisville with a BA in psychology and political science and has received his PhD in political science from Indiana University. Keith is married to Angela Baker and has twins, Bridget and Connor, who are now 16 years old. Please welcome Keith Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, everybody. As I made clear in my introduction, I sort of have 2 different identities when it comes to a topic like this. I am a political science professor, and I'm also involved in politics. I try to keep those things separate in many ways, but obviously they come together. And in a topic like this, I don't want to mislead anybody because I'll try to be fairly objective in talking about this topic. But as is the case with Mike Bennett, I've been involved in this stuff. As I said and told the folks when they were putting together the introduction, I just started a company that does some advising on how you raise money in campaigns. So I can't say my hands are completely clean in this business because the rules are the rules. And if you're going to do well under the rules, you have to play by the rules and you have to take advantage. And I'll tell you one thing right off the bat is that when you're running for office, you will find ways to get money. And if somebody wants to give money, they will find ways to give it. And that's because people are motivated by high motives and small, great, large, wonderful motives, some selfish, not so good motives. But they're rational about trying to achieve their objectives. And that's why it's really important to get the rules exactly right, because people are going to behave under those rules in whatever way maximizes their strategic gain. So in talking about soft money, I thought the first thing we want to think about is our dark money. There's just a little piece of a great big picture. So I wanted to start you with a paradox and then come back to this question of money in politics and see how it fits. If you think about what are the two things when we look at politics today that are most striking and make people most angry, they seem to be a contradiction. First, we have hyper-partisanship, very strong ideologies, people being driven in opposite directions, making it very difficult, if not impossible, to get done. And I think a great example of that is that if you ask what is our economic policy right now at the federal level, it's not the Obama policy, it's not the Republican Congress policy, it's the sequester, which was an agreement they came up with to put guns to their head. They said this agreement is so terrible that we will do anything to avoid it. It'll go into effect if we don't come up with a compromise because it has something in it that's disastrous for just about everybody, and that has been the budget we've been living under for the last 3.5 years. That's where we are. So super hyper partisanship and strong ideologies without any compromise in the middle. On the other hand, there's a pervasive sense that the political system is not geared toward the general good, the long-term interests of the people of the United States or the people of Florida or our local communities. It's captured by special interests who want particular things for government and get it. And heck with the general long-term interests of the people. Now, the interesting thing about those two problems is they seem to be somewhat contradictory. How can you be a big ideologue, at least if you're an ideologue, you have some general sense about what the common good is, and also be serving just special interests? And a lot of it comes back to the way we do elections and do politics in our country. It has to do with the way the parties work and the relationships of the party of the people, the way elections are run. And so if you're going to think about money in politics, you have to think about it in those terms. So let me just start by getting you to think about something very simple about elections in the United States as compared to other countries. Has anybody ever been in a country other than the United States, say Europe, and watched an election campaign? Anybody? How long is a national election in England or France or Ireland or Germany? How long are the elections? Does anybody know? Yeah, it's 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Occasionally a couple of months. How expensive do you think that is? Seriously. So if you shorten the elections, you don't need as much money to run. When you go to vote in a national election or in a regional election, depending how it's done in a country, who are you voting for, an individual or a party? And in most countries, the answer is a party. And most of the money goes through the parties. A lot of it is dark and a lot of it is obvious. But the money goes through the parties. In the United States, we have perpetual elections. We are never not doing elections in this country. They're ongoing all the time, and they're candidate-centered. So it's really up to the candidates in many respects to figure out where they can get money to come from. And it's in that context that we developed all these rules to try to keep candidates from being unduly influenced by money, because they need it if they're going to have a chance to communicate and a chance to survive. And I think when you think about money in campaigns, one of the first things you want to do, go back to the individuals involved. What are they trying to do? The individual candidates and these various different groups are trying to communicate with people who are largely disinterested, uninvolved, uninformed, who need to be mobilized to vote in the first place. And that costs a ton of money. And in a large-scale society such as ours, that probably means you need to have television ads. And television ads are incredibly expensive. You might use mail, but as you probably know, mail pieces, you get about 7 seconds with a person. I just talked to a mail vendor says, I want somebody from the mailbox to the trash bin. And he said down in Sarasota, where everybody's green, that probably means the recycle bin, but it's the same thing. You get 7 seconds. So you want to hit people with a big message. But if you're going to send those things out, it might be $10,000, $12,000 a piece of mail, even in, say, a state house or a state senate race. So this is how we do communication. And if you think about what's going on, most of the people being communicated with are not the ones who are super interested. Probably not the people in this room. Most of you vote, first of all, for one party most of the time. I won't guess which one. You may not like to say it. You may not tell people I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat because you think there's something sordid about only voting for one party, but you do. And you vote every time because otherwise you wouldn't be here. You're the kind of people who show up, who vote, become informed. Those ads are not for you. They're for the people who vote sometimes, and you don't know who they're going to vote for. And they're not very interested. They don't have much information. So it's very costly to bomb those people. So when you think about this problem in the first place, you want to think about why our elections are so expensive. Okay, so now there are various different groups of people involved in doing the financing other than a candidate who calls up his or her friends, neighbors, workmates, family members, and asks them for a contribution. These outside groups always want something. And historically, they're comprised of who? Those interest groups that Mike was talking about. Business trade associations, chambers of commerce, directly and indirectly, Associated Industries of Florida, a few different labor unions, and they want specific policies. If you think about these local elections that Kathy was talking about, you heard the names of a lot of people who are in development, and they have specific interests. If you think about the national level with these dark money PACs, super PACs particularly, you're talking about, it really is a small collection, about 100 unbelievably rich people. Now, here's what I want you to sort of get, just in thinking through what the mechanics of this problem are. Let's focus on those super rich people for a second. Who's the big intellectual in the Republican Party at the national level? Well, intellectual is not the word that comes to mind with Trump. No, one of his foes is Paul Ryan. Where does Paul Ryan get most of his ideas? Well, he gets most of his ideas from one particular think tank called the Cato Institute. And the Cato Institute has a nice office not too far off of Capitol Hill. Where does the Cato Institute get most of its money? It gets it from the Koch brothers. Okay? Let's talk about education. Kathy was talking about the role of various different interest groups in education. And the big push in education, a lot of these groups have been toward private schools, privately held charter schools, and testing for just about everything under the sun. It is now a citizens' rebellion. Where did these ideas come from? Well, they came from the Cato Institute. And they came from a variety of different foundations, which are nonprofits, who are funded by the Gates Foundation. Now, Bill Gates is not a big political guy, but he funds hundreds of foundations that generate ideas for testing, which then in turn generate legislative agendas through ALEC, which the Gates Foundation indirectly contributes to. And then some of those groups on the private charter side start getting involved in local elections. So at the end of it, you have an entire agenda for changing education that will do what? Put money in the hands of private vendors who run these schools and will require enormous amounts of capital investment in what? Computer technology. Gates Foundation. So what we need to think about is the pervasiveness of this, how thorough it is, and how it shapes not just specific elections, but the entire policy process. And that's where I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. But today is a hard one. It's really, really hard to try to ask these three awesome individuals to try to pack such a giant amount of information into 8 minutes each. So I applaud all of you for working so hard to jam that in there. At this time, in typical Tiger Bay style, we will open up this forum to the floor and to the members of our organization. If you are not familiar with the Tiger Bay policies, if you are a member, a paid member of Tiger Bay, you may feel free to step up to the microphone, as Marla is doing, and address one question, and only one question, to our panelists. You may direct it towards one panelist. You may direct it towards all three panelists. Two of them, just clarify who you would like your answer to be from. You have 30 seconds to ask your question. Try not to go over 30 seconds or, we'll all secretly groan and look at each other and roll our eyes while you're up at the mic, and no one wants to do that. So please keep that in mind. And then our speakers will, do their best to answer your question as closely and as well as they possibly can. If you are not a member of Tiger Bay, but you have a burning question that you absolutely have to ask one of our speakers, feel free to just, on your way to the mic, swing by the table, pay your $100 fee for the year. We'll happily take that from you, or electronic payment, or check, or money order, or we'll just show up at your house and knock on your door and take it. And then you are welcome to also join up. So we will take our first question from Marla Huff.
Hi, Marla Huff with Huff Engineering, and I'm a Tiger Bay board member. I agree with Dr. Fitzgerald. That's what I do. I don't listen to the robocalls. I take my mail and I dump it in the recycle bin on the way into the house. And after I've seen a commercial once, I just change the channel. But my question is for Kathy Ann Toons. When you ran for the Sarasota County Commission seat against Joe Barbetta, you opposed the Oriole spring training facility. Baseball is very popular. Do you feel that you underestimated people's love of baseball, or that the PAC was what contributed to your loss in that race?
Well, there wasn't a PAC that I knew of that was working against me. I was somebody who, if you want to get me going on spring training, we're going to be here a while. Because there's no data supporting that it helps the economy. If you ask economists, that's just reality. And that's why I opposed it. Bid rigging came up as a result of our lawsuit. The county wanted the city to bond so that they could bypass their $20 million bonding limit. There was a lot of shenanigans happening with that deal. And I actually voted to support a tax in the city for the Reds. So it's definitely a complicated issue. It didn't have a PAC working against me because I ran as an independent. I was naive enough to think that that was possible. What I would say is one of the problems with the low information voter, and frankly in Sarasota County, is the real race happens in August in the primary, because the Republican primary winner is going to go on to be the county commissioner, because in the down ballot race, people vote for a party. And frankly, I think if they investigated their county commission, this is not the Republican Party I grew up with. I mean, I voted for Reagan, okay? This is nothing like what I thought Republican was. This is crony capitalism, pure and simple. That's what we've got with our county commission. So if they did their research, I don't think they'd be voting for them. Anyway.
Also, just a reminder too, I forgot to bring up, we'll want to make sure to keep, because this topic is so broad. It is so very, very broad that we want to make sure we're focusing directly on campaign finance and campaign financing reform, and also do your best to keep it into a question form and not make a statement. David Zaccaguccino.
David Zaccanino, I'm a Tiger Bay member, and I guess I am naive because I'm running independent for a county commission seat. This question is for Senator Bennett. I think the general public, when they look at who's contributing to the campaigns, they see maybe 5 different donations from 5 different LLCs, but the same address. And as Kathy touched on, it's very hard to follow the money. Is there a way to increase the transparency so that people understand where this is coming from? I know it's part of the rules, and that's what happens. I mean, I've run a lot of campaigns myself, and I've been in a lot of elections. I've never taken dark money. That's my own personal choice. But is there a way for people to see transparency? Thank you.
Unfortunately, no. Okay, I mean, that's the short answer of the deal. We've even got the situation, Kathy or Willem touched on it, of even LLCs. You set them up in certain states like Nevada, Wyoming, someplace like that. You don't even have to disclose who's in that corporation. The way it is set now, And it's always been that way. This was not part of the Citizens United deal, but if I can remember when I had multiple corporations, I would write multiple checks because that was the rules. And so it's hard to criticize the politician, okay, when they're playing by a set of rules. But going back to what Keith said, if we could ever figure out how to get a shorter campaign season, I've got a very good friend of mine who runs over every couple of years in Belgium, and you would never see a negative ad in Belgium. It just doesn't happen, okay? And they have a very, very short period of time. And also, for the press in the room, the television does not bump their rates during campaign season. The newspapers don't bump their rates during campaign season. I've always said if the media really, truly wanted to do something about it, why don't they give it away? Okay, I mean, what the hell, they've already got the airtime. If you really want to do something about it, change it. But there's no incentive for anybody to want to change the deal other than the people in the room.
Thank you, Tim.
Davis Graham, a Tiger Bay member, and this goes to Dr. Fitzgerald. And I'm going to try to touch on just a little bit, but Thomas Friedman said the biggest economic crises we have in this country is education. And like our health care, we have given the responsibilities to the payers through the IRS incentives that they've created for our employers. Now we're giving our politics over to such a process where it's not being funded by us, it's being funded by companies. So it makes all the difference in the world. Our healthcare, our education is going to pot. Our healthcare is getting too expensive. Maybe it'll go back to the patient being more, being innovative. So my question is there possibilities for people like Walken Lawton, who I worked for his wife for 7 years, where it gets back to the core, where it's a $100 donation, he walks, he makes that type of effort, and it really grabs the people. Is there a chance for that?
Thank you, Davis. Who would you like your question to be geared towards?
I prefaced it by Dr. Fitzgerald.
Oh, thank you.
It's tough. So, first of all, Mike alluded to a constitutional amendment. So let's think about where the issue of is giving money in a campaign a form of speech. The whole idea of speech in the sense that it was protected by the Constitution is it's supposed to be public speech, not private speech. In other words, it only counts as protected speech as if you stand up in front of your neighbors and say it. So I think that one thing we need to do is demand that we have instant reporting of all money. It's technologically possible today that when the check clears, it shows up on a website immediately. And I think it would almost be better if we took out all the limits and just made it instantly available to everyone so that you could see where it's going. So that's first. Second, the key constitutional case was not so much Citizens United, but Buckley versus Vallejo, where the Supreme Court said giving money is speech, and they premised the assumption, the decision on the assumption that more money would not mean more speech and more influence. Empirically, that's obviously wrong. Obviously, if you're given millions and millions, you have more speech than somebody who gives 25. So there are ways, if you change Buckley v. Vallejo, to have real, firm limits on how much you spend, individuals give, so that we're all equal as democratic citizens. So I think that can be done and it should be done, and that's where the constitutional amendment needs to be. So I think total transparency and a certain level of equality. And the final thing is I'd say it's not a bad thing to let the parties do a lot of this work. If you if you gave money to the parties, let them decide where to give it, and it was all completely open, people would actually be able to hold the parties a little more responsible for what they do. Right now, it's hard to hold them responsible.
You know, going back to House Bill that was signed in 2013, it really did enforce more reporting rules, okay? When you start 60 days out, now it's monthly, and then when you get down to the last 10 days, last couple months, I think it's 60 days, then it's weekly, okay, that you have to report who gave you the money, and then the last campaign is 5 days out. The problem with it is the big money is so hidden because of the federal PACs and political committees that, yes, I can see that, you know, Sam Jones gave somebody a check for $200, but it's the big money that causes the problem. One of the things that some of the charter counties have done, specifically Sarasota County in their local races, they have limited the campaign contributions to $200. So if you're going to run a county commission race in Sarasota County, the most that somebody can give you for that race as an individual is $200. Well, then you get into the PAC money that Kathy was talking about. The $200 doesn't mean squat. Okay? It doesn't mean squat, because the real money is going to come through one of the dark money circuits, and so that's the problem. And going back what Keith was saying, unless we can do something about that, okay, it's not going to happen.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, I believe. Go right ahead.
My name is Cheryl Wilson, and I'm a member. I believe my question is primarily from Ms. Zantunes, but I would welcome either of you to comment on this. While Keith was talking, I got out my little iPhone that's on silenced and Googled the contributions, tried to see what I could find in 2014 for the 7 labor unions, and I found an interesting term. It was identifiable contributions, and that number was $12 million. I Googled another organization that we haven't heard their name today, and that's the NRA, and I found that their identifiable contributions were $27 million. So my curiosity is, you know, we did hear Koch Industries mentioned here today. My curiosity is of that graphic that you gave us with the local and other organizations in Florida. Are you seeing the influence of NRA or Koch industry money in those organizations?
You know, the first answer I have to say is no, but can I rule it out? No. You know, that Wyoming LLC, who's giving that money for a school board race? 45 grand. Used to cost 10 grand to run for school board as a candidate, and he didn't deal with PACs. Now in Sarasota County, it's $150,000 to $200,000. I don't think that's serving our kids. But I will say, I have a cousin at the Cato Institute, Michael Cannon, who I picked up at the airport for a fundraiser at the Ritz-Carlton. So they're fundraising here. Michael Cannon, my cousin, who I don't agree with, was one of the people who challenged Obamacare with the Supreme Court. So this stuff is woven into our society, and it's very difficult to tell. And one of the reasons I focus on local is because you can see it. It's a lot easier to see it. And if we don't clean it up, you know, we can wring our hands about what's going on in the state, and we can wring our hands about the federal, but you know what? If we can't clean up the mess in our own backyard, we have no reasonable expectation of cleaning up the state and the federal government. It starts here. And so I'm hoping that this will pique your interest to really look at those mailers, and maybe the Committee to Protect Florida Seniors should really be called the committee to make sure certain developers don't pay for infrastructure. Because I think that's really the political agenda that's being funded. You guys may have something else.
You talk about the NRA, and I think it's sort of a timely topic. So I want to go back to this theme that some of these big money donors who do contributions are active at every level in shaping the entire political agenda. So let's just think about that particular issue. In the history of jurisprudence about whether or not the Second Amendment should be interpreted fundamentally as a right for individuals, as opposed to a right for states to maintain militias, so that people would have control over whether we go to war, right? Because they wanted the states to have to muster up the army by going out and creating militias if we were going to get involved in foreign wars. That was the purpose of the whole thing. Up until 1992, nobody ever questioned that the Second Amendment was about that thing. So was it a fundamental individual right? Well, yeah, but for the purpose of raising militias, okay? In the 1950s, the NRA and other folks started putting together contests for law students to write essays to argue that it was an individual right without respect to state rights. Then they started funding professorships and contests to see who could get law school journal articles passed making that argument. Then they contributed to something called the Federalist Society, which became an amazing national association of conservative legal scholars that produced Justice Scalia, for example. And then in 1996 or 1994, after 1992, President Clinton passed an assault ban weapon. The NRA went after about 10 members of Congress throughout the United States in rural districts who were Democrats and knocked them all off. And from that point forward, nobody on the electoral side really wanted to take on much having to do with gun control. So look, it's freedom of speech. They're allowed to do this. They're able to do this. It's free for them to do this. But they have been shaping the entire intellectual agenda and electoral agenda around these issues since the 1960s. And they created a set of constitutional law cases. They created a set of laws about this to the point that now we have a young, angry person able to buy weapons who can kill and injure 100 people. And they're saying, you as citizens have no right and no voice about regulating that. And that is just one aspect of policy where big money completely controls and dominates specific important issues of public policy. And we have to bring that to an end so that everybody's voice can be heard.
Thank you. And our last question for the afternoon.
My name is Jamie Campfield. I'm a new member of this organization, and in order to be able to ask a question. I'm encouraged by Mr. Bennett's comment about the need for a constitutional amendment, and I want you all to realize that it is happening. It is happening. There are groups all over the United States, nationally, that are working for a constitutional amendment. And if you all agree with that, you need to get behind that. Locally, there's an organization which I am the founder, I'm the founder of an affiliate of the national organization called Move to Amend. And we have gone in front of the city of Sarasota. We've gone in front of the city of Anna Maria Island. We went in front of the Sarasota County Commission, and last week we went in front of the Manatee County Commission. And what we've asked them is the following, and this is the question I have to Mr. Bennett. Would he support this initiative? And what it is asking the county commission to authorize the placement of a non-binding referendum on November's ballot to let the people of Sarasota and the people of Manatee County decide if this is an issue that needs to be addressed by the people and by the majority of the people of our counties and not by elected elite few. So, Mr. Bennett, that is the question. Would you support a resolution authorizing the placement of a non-binding referendum on November's ballot, giving the people of Manatee and Sarasota County the opportunity to voice their opinions on this subject?
You know, it's interesting. Probably no. Okay, and here's why. I happen to believe that we should always have the right to put forth a petition for anything, and I think that people should be able to sign that. But it's just like having pure democracy. If we actually had pure democracy, we would all vote on a computer, and everybody in the country would push a button, and that's pass or not. It's extremely difficult to get a constitutional amendment through. I mean, you look at, Keith, how long have they been trying to get the ERA through? since 1971, Equal Rights Amendment, that says women should have the same rights as men, okay? We've still got a couple of states to go. I mean, it's gone on since 1971, trying to get that kind of thing. So when you try to put those things into an immediate deal, as far as the constitutional amendment, I'm for it, okay? Having more of the people vote for it, I'm for it. But some of those things are extremely difficult, to try to get people to participate. As hard as we fight in Manatee County, Sarasota, state of Florida, across the country to get people to turn out to vote, by and large, our turnout is miserable. And people come to an organization like this, and they leave frustrated, they leave mad, but then they go home and go back to their jobs and the issue's over. But I do believe that the people of Manatee County or Sarasota County should be able to get a petition on any time. And if there's enough people to petition for something, then we would definitely put it on the ballot. Can I get it on before the November one? Yes. Could I get it on before the primary? It might be a little shaky. We'll be going to press pretty
Sir,
quick.
it's my understanding, though, that the county commission needs to approve the placement, not a petition, according to our non-charter concept
On your
here.
non-charter amendment, if it's going to be countywide, if you get the number of petitions signed, you can get it on there. But it has to be, the county commission will approve what is their agenda. But if it's a citizen's thing, you can petition for it and get it on.
So how many signatures would I need to get that done, sir?
You can
How many,
take that
Sharon?
afterwards.
Over 14,000. There's 3 ways you can amend the charter in
Yeah, no, charter counties are different. You got to remember, charter counties are very, very unique.
Sarasota's charter county, but we're
Sarasota's a
non-charter.
charter
right?
county, Manatee County is a non-charter county, so they have different sets of rules.
So are you suggesting that I can get a petition together here in Manatee County, and that would then make the decision to put it on the ballot?
Jamie, you're actually completely welcome to, and I'll phrase this to you and to all of our lunch members. If there's a question you didn't get to ask today that you still want to, please, these speakers will still be here afterwards. Feel free to approach them and talk to them if there was still something that you didn't want to get. Feel free to bring that up, or if you even had a follow-up question, by all means, it's very, very regular that our speakers stay afterwards and continue to talk with people. So by all means, take advantage of that if you feel you must. As always is customary, we like to present the Tiger by the Tail Award to the person that we felt had the most engaging question today, the board member that did the best. Our board member, Michael Gallen, was carefully watching over questions and nominating them in his head, and today he gave the award to Davis Graham. So Davis, you can come see me afterwards. Thank you for asking such a great question. I'd again like to thank all of our board members, especially our committee members. Also, just remind you that you can continue to renew your membership if you've not yet done so. I want to thank Charles Clapsaddle and all of the METV crew who constantly show up and film this and air it. If you want to share this program with one of your friends, or if you missed part of it or you want to go back over it, we have it on our website, manateetigerbay.org. We always try to get the program up as quickly as possible. We've got an archive of all of our past programs on there for your viewing pleasure whenever you want to do that. Last, just to give you a primer of our next topic next month, I won't even ask for a show of hands because basically everyone in the room's arms would get tired. Have you witnessed asking a local politician a simple question and managed to get a befuddling 8.5-minute long answer that by the time they were done, you had gone off somewhere else in your head and none of your questions had actually been addressed? We have decided as a board and a program committee to make our next meeting a little more engaging. We will be having what amounts to a rapid fire town hall style meeting. We will be bringing in qualified candidates in contested races, forgive me, for both Manatee County Commission and for school board. We will open the meeting with them each given roughly 1 minute to introduce themselves and let them know who they are. And we will basically open up the rest of the program to questions from our members for one, all, or multiples of them. Here's the kicker. They are only given 30 seconds to respond, or else we buzz them and we move on again. So this should be fun. We hope to see you all next month. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you for being an involved part of this community. Take care.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?